Hello guys, thanks for joining me. I thought I'd do something a little bit different today, and I'll just use Google Earth here to show you a bit of my past history. Kind of inspired by a video that Jim Timber just put out about some reminiscences that he had. And I do a lot the same myself, but I use Google Earth quite a lot because it's the only facility I have for reliving some of my past. So anyhow, this video is kind of dedicated to you, Jim Timber, but anybody else who's interested in my past history, you're welcome to watch it. If not, you're welcome to switch off the video. Anyhow, Jim, my time in Germany begins in McGraw Street. I don't remember which of these buildings, but my father ended up in Fort Riley after having gone to Vietnam or having returned from Vietnam. And that is Morris Hill School, elementary school up there. It's all new now. It's completely different to when I was there. But anyhow, that was the neighborhood that I was living in. And like Dorothy, we left Kansas in early 1972. And we flew across the Atlantic Ocean. And I live in the United Kingdom nowadays, and I have done so for the last 40 years, and I live up there somewhere in northern Scotland. Anyhow, in early 1972, we ended up in Frankfurt to begin with. The U.S. Air Base in Frankfurt, which is down there. It's all gone now. It's all the civilian airport nowadays. I think it's one of the largest airports in Europe. So that's Frankfurt Airport. And the bottom bit used to be the U.S. Army, not U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force bit. It was called U.S. Air Force Rhein-Main Air Base. The only thing that's left now is the little hotel that we stayed in. So the first few days in Germany, we stayed in that hotel there, which was the base hotel. And a lot of service families would stay a few nights there prior to being assigned there, wherever they would have gone in Germany. Again, it's changed quite a lot in the last 50, 60 years, but that is the hotel still being used as a hotel for truckers nowadays, I believe. Anyhow, from Hanau, from Frankfurt, my father was stationed to Hanau, which is not far from Frankfurt, which is there. That is the old army base in Hanau. It's called Pioneer, and that is the American housing area on the bottom there. And that is the school that I attended. And most of the army base is all gone now. It's all been torn down. There's just a few houses left. But we didn't live there. We lived across in the suburbs in what was called Kesselstadt, or the West End. And we lived on Karlsbader Straße, which is there. And we lived in that building there. I can actually show you the building. So that is the building that we lived in for the first few months that we lived in Germany. God knows how my parents ended up getting the building, the apartment there. I have no idea. It was a kind of a German housing association or something, I believe. A lot of American personnel at the time did live in what was called the economy, so that is living out with the American Army facilities out in the German community. And I'm trying to get a good view of our apartment, which I'm not getting here. We lived on the, I think, the sixth floor. So there we go. Come on, man. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's our apartment that we lived in early 1972. That was the parking lot there, and I remember as a kid waiting for my father to get home to drive into the car park, the parking lot here. So I used to stand at the balcony looking down to watch my father arriving in the evenings after work. And that was our entrance there, and we had an elevator take us up. My father actually didn't work in Pioneer. He worked not far from town, though, in another American facility called Fliegerhorst. If I can find it. There we go. First of all, we lived there. There was the American school there, so clear across town. And my father worked up here in a motor pool on a army base called Fliegerhorst. It was a former Luftwaffe base back in the war. And again, most of it is torn down. Just a few buildings have survived, and including so that's a few of the buildings that have survived up to now. And you can see they're all World War II or late 30s German Wehrmacht buildings. The base was taken over by the U.S. Army in 1945 and used up until the early 1990s. They flew helicopters from here, but they also had an armored division based here, and that's the remains of the motor pool area that my father worked in. Again, that would have been all houses there, and have all been torn down. Quite a lot missing here nowadays. Anyhow, we didn't stay there for very long. By the summer of 1972, my father was reassigned to near the East German border, and we ended up in a small town called Bad Kissingen, which is there. And the East German border is along that white line there. So let's have a look how far. We only lived about 20 miles or so from the border. So we lived there, and we lived about 37 clicks, or about 23 miles from the East German border. And that's where we spent the last 7 years of my father's time in the military. So I lived there from 1972, the late summer of 1972. I think it must have been August that we moved there, all the way up until May 1979. It's a small Bavarian town. On the northern edge was a army base, American army base. And that's the housing area there, the American military housing there. So these three buildings there, these two buildings there were American apartments, and all the ones up here were all part of the housing area. And the base used to be there. It's mostly gone now. It's all been torn down, turned into supermarkets and the like. You can still see some of the hard stands where the military vehicles were parked at the time. Anyhow, you can actually see my old house. We lived on Fallstrasse, apartment number 18, so that's my old house there, old building. And we lived on the top floor there, so that's where I spent my time in Germany mostly. That was the bedroom for my parents, and that used to be the living room windows there. They didn't have the balconies when we lived there. These were all put on when the Germans rebuilt the housing area. Same with the paint jobs. Everything's been repainted. But that's the building there. I can actually show you what it looked like back in the day. So that's the same building from the back. And we lived on the top floor there. So my brother and I shared a bedroom. That was our bedroom window there. That was the bathroom window. That was the dining room window. And that black thing there was a bird table, a wooden bird table. And that was the kitchen there. And then that was the other apartment across the stairwell. So that was our bed here, seen from the back. That's my brother and my mother. Back in the day, I think these pictures were taken in 1978. That's my mother here, again with the back of the building. You can see a stairwell going down to the basement level, and it had a nursery school there for the kindergarten kids. I was too old to go there. My brother attended that nursery, so it was pretty handy for him to go there. And that's the front of the building there. So as you can see, they didn't have the balconies in our time. But that's the building there. And there. That's our family car there. And as I said, that was our apartment up there. It was apartment F. There was A, B, C, D, E, F. So all these buildings were built in 1953 to 1954, I believe. So they were only about 20 years old. These are the original balconies on these buildings. Some of the buildings had balconies, ours didn't, as I said, but these ones had. So these are the original balconies. You can compare them to the new ones that they put in. These large buildings had a basement that ran all the way along, and we used, as kids, used to scare ourselves by going into the basements at night when the lights were off and daring ourselves to walk along the entire length of the building in the pitch black. Going around the corner here would have taken us to where we used to get picked up for our school to Swineford. I attended the local school in BK up until 1977, and after that I ended up going to Swineford to junior high school there, which was about half an hour's drive away. And that was the back gate to the base. All these buildings were new. There's been a lot of reconstruction to the place over the last 50 years. The Americans moved out in the mid-1990s, and that building, one of the buildings on here is now a hotel, and most of them are otherwise privately owned. So again, some of my friends lived here. James lived in here. Sven lived in one of those apartments. My friend Butch lived, and his family lived in that apartment down there, the bottom one. My friend Tom lived in that building there at the very end. And then another friend, Matthew, lived in either one of these two, either that one or that apartment there. And another good friend, Gary, lived in that building there, on the ground floor down there somewhere. So as I say, that used to be the army base there, and that was the school there. I actually got a another picture I could show you. I get to the correct folders. This picture was taken in the 1960s, and that is the building that I lived in. And as you can see, that was the army base back in the day before they tore it all down. That was the motor pool area there for the 2nd 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment. That's where my father worked, in one of these motor pools up here, the big one up here. That was the 2nd 41st Field Artillery motor pools there. They had a field artillery unit based here as well. The hard stands were up here where the tanks and everything used to be parked. That's the back gate I just showed you, and used to walk, all the kids used to walk through down that street here, along here, past the chapel, past the NCO club, which is that building there, down this lane here, and that was the school there. That was my old school back in the 1970s. So you can see it was on the other side of the base. So it meant we always went through it twice a day in grade school, so you got a lot of opportunities to see the soldiers, tanks, and everything else. It was a pretty good upbringing. I really enjoyed my time in Germany. And maybe show you some pictures from the 1970s, what it looked like during my time there. These are pictures I've taken from the internet mostly. So you can see here that used to be one of the buildings there, as it looked in the 1970s before it was repainted. This is just the white paint work that they all had. That's a big hill there. My friends and I spent a lot of time going up and down these woods here. That's the gas station there for the base's POVs. And you can see some of the engineering trucks there. That is the old chapel, kind of a Mexican-style chapel that was torn down by the Germans. And we used to pass it twice a day every time we went to school. That is the PX, or shopping area, that we used to go to. That was the snack bar there, the PX down there. One of the barracks. And on the bottom of the snack bar was the military police station down there. They had a jail down there for locking up anybody that needed to be locked up. There was a playing fields in the back there. Again, another photograph of the shopping area. I must have gone up and down these stairs hundreds of times, thousands of times. As I say, that was the snack bar there, and right as you got into it, there were pinball machines there, and we used to play the pinballs all the time. And these ones here were the PX, where you bought all your other goods and what have you. These were the barracks. They're all torn down now. I mean, none of them are there. And that is the pillar there. That used to be the main entrance to the old German army base. So these buildings were all built by the Wehrmacht in 1936, 37 to 38. There used to be a big eagle on the top there with a swastika that was obviously knocked down by the American army when they took over the place in 1945. But that was the main entrance back in the day. That was the entrance to the bowling club and gym. Again, with the barrack buildings in the back. The building in the front here is the EM Club, the Enlisted Men's Club. That was the mascot tank on base, an old M4 Sherman tank. And as kids, we used to climb into that until they padlocked the hatches so we couldn't get back into the tank. That's a friend here. That's the back entrance here to the base. Again, you can see the barracks there. They're all gone now. This is my friend Thomas. He was a kid in my class in grade school. That's the bottom of Schultstrasse. Again, that's the building I showed you a little bit earlier, and that is my building there, and that was my bedroom there, overlooking the little construction site. That was a kind of a cement factory, German cement factory, right on the edge of the army base and housing area. So that was my building, as I say. So that's just some kids on the steps. And again, another photograph of the army base before they tore down the building. The only building that remains is that building there. That used to be the mess hall building. Back in the Wehrmacht days, it used to be the headquarter building with the clock tower. All the other buildings all torn down. So that's where the enlisted men lived. So that's unmarried soldiers, all the young guys lived there. And the housing area is mostly for NCOs with their families and officers. Again, that's what it would have looked like back in the 70s when I lived there, one of the buildings. You can see the plain metal doors, stairwell, and then all the apartments on either side of the stairwell and the old cars that we used to have in those days. That's a viewing tower on top of a hill that we used to go to as kids. And again, you got the barracks. I can't remember his name, but that was Matthew's brother. He was the older brother of a friend of mine who was in my class. That was in the AYA back lot playing basketball. That's the German building right by the main entrance of the army base. And I spent a lot of time with my friends in the playing field. That's a helicopter landing site here, so all the helicopters used to land there. Otherwise, you had the baseball diamond over here. You got the housing area in the background there. My friend Gary, I should say, lived in that building there. That's the maintenance depot in the middle there. And we used to go and mess around here, play ball, do a lot of messing around as kids usually do. And that's looking the other way, so that is looking out of base to the houses, and that house there would be behind the photographer who took this photograph. That's us looking into base, and that is behind Gary's house there. And again, we spent a lot of time just messing around there. That's the sand pit that we used to play with our toy soldiers. Again, with the maintenance depot in the background. And again, that's the base here. That's the movie theater that we used to go to. See all the movies back in the 1970s, Star Wars and everything else. It's called the Outpost Theater here, but it was also called the Frontier Theater. So I spent many, many hours in that place. And that was the main entrance into base back in those days. It was a wire enclosure. Top there. Again, that's a tank there. And that the flag post with the flag that was raised 5:30 in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and it came down again at 5 o'clock in the evening. And that's the view from the an aerial view of the lower base. So that's the motor pool area in the back there where my father worked. That's the 2nd 41st artillery area there, the barracks there. Again, that's the headquarter building there. That's the only building that remains. All these buildings have been torn down, and it's all like supermarkets and shops and garages and God knows what nowadays. And another view of the tank there, the mascot tank. And another view taken from one of the barrack buildings. Anyhow, I think I'll leave it at that. It's getting a little bit long. So as I say, we lived there until 1979, and after 1979, in May of 1979, we left Germany. My father left the army, and we ended up in Pissville, near Chandler. I'm not going to embarrass the people living there who still live there, but this is where we ended up, and it was god awful. It was just off the Pisgah Highway, which is that highway there, and we lived somewhere around there somewhere. I'm not going to embarrass anybody by saying where, but it was a god awful place, and by the time I was in my about 19 or so, I moved from there up to there. Ended up somewhere in there, and from there, one day in the 1980s, one cold day in the 1980s, I arrived in London, and from London I ended up in Scotland, and I've been here ever since. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed that little video, especially you, Jim Timber. As always, thanks for watching, anyone who stayed the course, and thanks, and bye for now.